Another plant that loves life by the river is Butterbur. It's very distinctive with these big leaves and often catches mud and debris that get washed up when the river's in spate. While it's not an edible plant, it's called Butterbur because they used to use these leaves to wrap blocks of butter, and apparently it helped to stop the butter from going off. It does have its practical uses in other ways too. Butterbur comes in handy as an instant disposable plate. Perfect for eating my lovely wild salad off. Here we have some garlic mustard, some few flowered leek, some ground elder, some wild garlic, some bitter cress, and to finish off, some sweet cicely. And another practical use for Butterbur is it can be used for an item of clothing that comes in particularly handy in Scotland. A hat to keep the rain off. Here we are on the edge in Roslin Glen, among the ground layer of the forest, and it's carpeted with what's known in Latin as Allium ursinum, which translates literally as bear garlic, perhaps alluding to the fact that bears once roamed these woods in this glen and supplemented their diet with this delicious wild food. It's also known in this country as ramson or simply as wild garlic. And at this time of year, what a wonderful pungent garlic scent comes off the forest floor. Wild garlic likes to grow on the forest floor from about March, when it has no obstruction to the light coming through the trees, the leaves aren't opened yet, and the plant thrives. Now that the canopy is shading over, its days are probably numbered, and it will soon yellow and die back, waiting to sprout again next spring. But here it is in its prime, ready for eating. Unlike domesticated garlic, the emphasis is not on the bulb, it's on the fleshy leaves and the lovely white flower. Its medicinal properties are similar to cultivated garlic, and the flavour is magnificent. Though when we cook with it, we're going to treat it slightly differently to the bulbs of garlic we would find in cloves in our kitchen. Wild garlic has these long, smooth, elliptical leaves that come to a point. And the best way to surely identify it is simply to snap one off and smell it. When we pick wild garlic, we need to be sensitive to the plant. It's a slow-growing ancient woodland plant that's under threat from foreign invasive species. So it's best just to take one leaf from each plant in order that the rest of the plant can survive and procreate. It's also okay to nip off some of the flowers, for they have a particularly nice sharp taste and can be used in salads. We should only harvest wild garlic where it grows abundantly. In order to conserve the delicate ecosystem of the woodlands, we need to give wild garlic the best chance it can to establish itself and stay established. Aside from habitat destruction, the worst enemy of wild garlic is this stuff in front of me. You can see some wild garlic here, but down the slope is this yellow coloured stuff, a foreign invader known as Flowered Leek. First recorded botanically here in Midlothian in the mid-19th century, it has spread rapidly along riverbanks, throughout gardens and, unfortunately, in woodlands. The Flowered Leek has a rampant habit and spreads far more quickly than wild garlic can. You can see it taking over here as there's just a few pathetic little leaves of wild garlic left. This gives us a chance to compare it. Here we have the broad, smooth, elliptical wild garlic leaf, and here we have the skinny, lighter green few-flowered leek leaf with that much more pronounced ridge on the back. Let's compare it to the wild garlic. So they really are quite distinct. You can see this wild garlic broader and darker green, and the skinnier, slightly fleshier, lighter green few-flowered leek, and this is lighter green even when it's not yellowing under the canopy. The flowers are different. Here's the nice bunched spiky flowers of the wild garlic, and the few-flowered leek, well, the flower's almost spent now, but it's really just one cream-coloured flower. And by this time you've got these tiny little bulbs springing up from the few-flowered leek which will drop off and seed at an alarming rate. The few-flowered leek, like garlic, like wild garlic, is edible. With wild garlic, as we've seen, we only pick one leaf from each plant at a time. It's a different story with a few-flowered leek. The best thing we can do is root this stuff out and get the bulbs out. And perhaps if we keep weeding it back from around the wild garlic, it will give us, the wild garlic, a chance to recuperate. This is a very intensive method. It's almost like gardening the forest, but it has worked in Australia where there are a lot of noxious plants overtaking the natives, and this method goes by the name of bush regeneration. Once we've weeded the few-flowered leek out and given it a wash, and make sure that these bulbs do not get spilt around the forest where there's no few-flowered leek, and for goodness sake not in your compost, otherwise it'll take over your garden. If you can dispose of these by burning them or putting them maybe into landfill, you can use the rest of the plant just like you would a normal leek. So you can do like omelettes or vegetable soups and the like with it. And there in the bared soil, a young wild garlic plant soldiers on. Here we have a lovely golden flower in this native woodland comfrey. It's a really great food plant. You can pick the leaves, nice fleshy hairy leaves, and they can be battered and deep fried. They're often called vegetarian fish by the shape of them. Comfrey can occasionally be confused with horrible, smelly, poisonous plants such as stinking hedge woundwort, or indeed with foxglove. However, when we see these golden bell-shaped flowers, we know we're safe. We have these lovely, hairy, fleshy leaves, and it's quite a rampant plant, so we can pick a fair bit of it. It's also a great medicinal plant. It's a great cell regenerator, a fast healer, and it has a very ancient tradition and was said to be able to do remarkable things. Now, in the old days, comfrey was known as knit bone. It was said to be able to knit bone and other tissues back together. And we have remnants of a couple of old spells from early Ireland and ancient Germany that suggest this spell was used with comfrey to knit bones back together. So, back in the early Middle Ages, if I'd broken my finger or sprained it in some way, I'd put the comfrey on, and I'd be saying something like a story of the old gods and how, say, their horse sprained its fetlock or whatever, and I'd be saying we put blood to blood, bone to bone, flesh to flesh, sinew to sinew, etc. The comfrey would be wrapped around the injured limb or digit. It would be changed, perhaps even several times a day, but people have sworn that even that can regenerate the cells of dead tissues very quickly. Closer to the surface of the skin, it can be used to heal cuts and grazes, although it's suggested that you shouldn't put comfrey healing ointment on deeper wounds because the skin cells will regenerate quickly and you may trap infection underneath.